A very good morning to you, and many thanks for joining us on today's edition of Spectrum Alive at Spectrum Television, putting you through the day's biggest political news stories and events. And it's all geared up, of course, towards the formal inauguration of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu come May 29. It will form most of the basis of our discussion this morning, where we try to ascertain if Nigerians should be optimistic and quite positive about the incoming administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's more or less most of the discussions that would dominate the political space, with 24 days to go before the expected transition of power from President Buhari to the president-elect. Plus, the House of Representatives has demanded that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, deletes the names of dead voters from its humongous voter register. But this is following a concern raised at the plenary by a member, Leke Adenigbe, who claims that he saw his late father's name on the voter register just before the elections. These are the issues up for discussion, and we'll dwell on them later on. But let's start off the program, shall we, with a roundup of the day's biggest political news stories and events. And we begin from the nation's capital, Abuja, where the senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, Malam Garba Shehu, said many of the leaders of the All Progressives Congress APC would February 25 presidential election. Shehu also said that the victory of the president-elect and the vice president-elect Bola Tinubu and Kashim Shettima respectively, as well as the established control of the APC in 21 out of 36 states in the last general elections, firmly established the party as a dominant national political party. Now, speaking while receiving the Forum of Arewa Young Lawyers, the AYLF, the presidential spokesman said it is a difficult reality for the opposition parties. A statement by the Deputy Director, Information, State Health, Asian Programs and Projects. And he said in the hands of the opposition, many of the laudable programs of the Buhari administration, as he claims, would have been sabotaged or unimplemented. Now, Minister of State for Labour and Employment Festus Keyamo San has responded to comments by the Bishop Emeritus of the Archdiocese of Abuja, Cardinal George sees Tinubu is an anomaly since Tinubu's victory is being challenged in court by Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi of the PDP and Labour Party respectively. Now, responding to the cleric's position on Tinubu's victory, Keyamo, in a statement posted on his Twitter handle, said Nania Khan's comment is an embarrassment to the body of Christ. Well, he said a statesman who doubles as a man of God should strive to be fair to all. And he also added that the embarrassment to the body of Christ is getting too much, and no politician is worth dragging this dignified body into unnecessary political controversy. Well, let's stay with concerns around May 29. The military high command yesterday assured the nation that there was no cause for concern over the May 29 official inauguration of the new administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu, saying the armed forces and other security agencies are fully prepared to make the exercise hitch-free. Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Musa Dad, and other security agencies in the past 2 weeks across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. Now, he declared affirmatively that Nigerians should not entertain any fear that the May 29 transition would be truncated, as the military, he claims, is in collaboration with the police and other security agencies who were working round the clock to deal decisively with any potential threat inimical to the peaceful inauguration as being planned by the government. Now, he explained that the electioneering had come and gone, and the winner had been declared, hence the inauguration would hold as planned. Now, according to him, elections have come and gone, and a winner for the presidential election has also been announced, adding that there is a transition committee in place comprising all members of the security agencies, the ministries of government, as well as the agencies, to ensure that the event is held successfully and without a glitch. Now, as the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal gets set to begin hearing on the various election petitions before it, the Neo Africana Center NARC has called on the judiciary to rise to the occasion and be prepared to play its role as the bastion of democracy. And the public policy think tank group said it's compelled to make this statement and the charge in the light of the many flaws and infractions that characterize the 2023 general elections, where the center believes that the rights director of public affairs, Jenkins Udu, the center expressed grave concern over the charade called the 2023 elections, a situation which is said has given rise to the plethora of litigations that the tribunal is saddled with. It has therefore charged the judiciary to leave above board by cleansing the tank concerned with the tripartite principles of democracy, which is good governance and the rule of law. We have remained scandalized by the elaborate charade which the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, seamlessly passed off as elections in 2023. The exercises, which held on February 25 and March 18, remain a huge national embarrassment. The statement further said the Electoral Commission did not subject or subvert its own rules, but also abandoned midstream the technological innovations which would have made the conduct and outcome of the polls almost seamless. And it says, while they do not intend to go into the nitty-gritty of the flawed exercises, they made bold to say that the February 25 presidential election at bay. Of suspended party members, as reported by Abia and Enugu state executives of the APC, and they've said that those who were found guilty of anti-party activities by their ward executives and ratified by the zonal state executives would be suspended, and they include some rather big names. Ken Namani, who is the former Senate president, stands suspended. There's also the current Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyema, the former governor of Enugu State, Sullivan Chime, the former Speaker of the State House of Assembly in Enugu State, Eugene Odo, Director General, Voice of Nigeria, Osita Okechukwu, as well as the former Commissioner in Enugu State, Joe Mamel. Others are the Special Assistant to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Flavor Eze, the former chairman of the party in the state, Ben Woye, a former deputy state chairman, AC Ude, as well as Abodeze Ocho, Chukwudi Igwe, Kingsley Uduju, former military governor of the state, Joe Oji, as well as Maduka Arum and Chidera Obed. Interesting times indeed for the APC in that region, considering the big wigs that have been placed on the sledgehammer by virtue of their suspension from the party. Also, that left to be seen now is whether the National Working Committee of the APC would ratify the suspension of the names that have been reeled out, underscores the deep crisis within the APC, even when it should be celebrating the outcome of the elections that produced its standard bearer at the national level as president-elect. Will mirror these activities and bring you up to speed. But let's go to the green chambers of the National Assembly, where the House of Representatives has demanded the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, develop a system that could delete dead voters from the voter register. And this was the resolution of the lawmakers after a motion of urgent national importance by a member, Leke Abejide, drawing the attention of the House to what he described as irregularities observed during the 2023 general elections. Now, Abejide, who moved the motion, said his late father's name was seen in the INEC register. Or the lawmaker further advised INEC to deregister any voter who doesn't vote in the last two election cycles. Well, the House also earlier directed the National Assembly clerk to transmit the bill for constitutional amendments to provide for uniform retirement age for judicial officers and pension rights to President Muhammadu Buhari. So it's left to be seen how INEC intends to follow up on the concerns raised by the members of the Green Chambers, though it begs the question, while Honorable Leke had experienced or observed this anomaly in the voter register just before the election but did not raise this alarm, why now? All right, we revisit these issues deliberately when we come back from this break. Do well to stay with us. We'll be getting in touch with political affairs analyst Gordon Odopert, and will be joining us virtually to talk things through the two big concerns of the day: the appeal made by the House of Reps members to INEC, as well as whether Nigerians should be positive and hopeful about the Tinubu administration. We're 24 days away from being inaugurated. All of that and more after the break.
Mr. Speaker, my distinguished colleagues, Honorable Peter Ogunozeke Abatasi, Deputy Leader of the House. Mr. Speaker, I second the motion as ably moved by the House Leader. I so second.
As for the colleagues, those in favor of the motion say aye. Against say nay. The House is hereby resolving to Committee of the Whole to consider reports and bills. Respected colleagues, the first bill to consider for an act to establish National Sports Commission to be charged with responsibility of administering, encouraging, and developing sports and games throughout Nigeria and for related matters. And I invite the leader of the House to give the synopsis for the report.
17.
16.
Okay. Okay, sir. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, this is a bill for an act to establish the National Sports Commission to be charged with the responsibility of administering and encouraging and developing sports and games throughout Nigeria and for related matters. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a straightforward bill. It has to do with the encouragement and development of our sporting activities as a nation. And I think this bill will go a long way in really entrenching a very good legislation that will promote and will provide platform for an effective sporting activities in the country. It has to do also with the creating a platform for our youth to indulge in sports and sporting activities. Mr. Speaker, in this era where the youth are looked upon to provide leadership not only in sporting activities, I think this is a very good bill that every member should contribute to see it through. Mr. Speaker, I therefore submit that we give this bill a speedy.
Plus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 7, plus 8, plus 9, 10 to 15, 16, plus 17, plus 18, 19, schedules, explanatory memoranda, if any. None. Long 30. Respected colleagues, the second bill to be considered for an act to establish Federal University of Science and Technology, Remo, Ogun State, and following matters. I now invite the leader to give the synopsis of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, this is another bill, of course, an establishment bill, a bill to establish a Federal University of Science and Technology, Remo, in Ogun State. Mr. Speaker, this is also a developmental bill that will now enhance and entrench an establishment of a university, especially in the area of technology, science and technology. Mr. Speaker, I believe honorable members can agree with me that science and technology is one sector of Nigerian education that we must have to promote. And establishing this university in an area like Remo in Ogun State will definitely help us achieve this educational development. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome back, and many thanks for staying with us as to watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. We're still trying to get through to Gordon Roberts, and we hope to join us to talk to us about some of the issues up for discussion especially the second issue of the day, and that's around the appeal pushed forward by the House of Representatives to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to clean what they've described as the bogus voter register, with reference to the names of dead voters who were already in INEC's voter register in the lead up to the 2023 general elections. This is courtesy of a complaint that was raised on the floor of the House following a motion on matters of urgent public importance moved by Honorable Leke Abejide, ADC, Kogi State, yesterday. According to him, during the 2023 general election, it was clear that the names of those who have long died were still displayed on INEC's voter register. Well, INEC had inundated Nigerians with the exact figures of the actual number of persons who were captured in its voter register after the continuous voter registration exercise was done and dusted. And they claimed that there were over 93 million persons registered to vote in the 2023 elections. And even after the collection of the permanent voter cards ahead of the casting of votes, INEC also said over 86 million Nigerians had succeeded in getting their PVCs. But disturbingly, the number of persons who came out to take part in the process itself fell, short of expectations, if anything, by the figures on the voter register is to go by. But disturbingly, we now find out that a lot of dead names were on the voter register, and anomalies and flaws that are perhaps enough in itself to put paid to the declaration of Bola Tinubu as president-elect, or maybe any of the elections held so far. And while you could argue, and this are matters left for the courts to decide, I think the House of Reps, as a matter of urgent importance and public importance at that, have urged INEC to clean what they described as a bogus voter register. We'll come back to that point later, but let's now delve on the first big issue of the day. It's a continuation of our mirroring on the possibilities that abound in the Bola Ahmed Tinubu presidency for Nigeria. As we know, it's barely 24 days to go before the expected inauguration on May 29, where President Buhari is expected to hand over power to Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We're already receiving statements of solidarity for the president-elect in line with the expected ceremony to come on May 29. And one of them, of course, is coming from the military high command, who have said everything is in top gear. Preparations are in place. There's a collaboration with the army as well as security agencies in the country to ensure a seamless transfer of power from President Muhammadu Buhari to President-elect Bola Tinubu. But the burgeoning concern here for most Nigerians who are perhaps coming to grips or terms with the fact that after the election comes governance, and that's what we should be focusing on at the moment, would be more concerned in channeling their energy towards appraising the manifestos of the standard bearer of the APC and now President-elect Bola Tinubu, captured in his so-called renewed hope agenda for Nigerians going forward. Well, we do know that Mr. Tinubu means different things to many persons. He's been grappling with a lot of issues around his identity, with popular Nigerian renowned journalist David Ondain unearthing facts to buttress claims that Tinubu actually holds a dual citizenship of Nigeria and Guinea. And it says that amounts to committing perjury, which he feels is enough to disqualify him from even standing for the election, let alone being declared as president-elect or being sworn in, while of course his opponent in the just concluded election are premising their arguments for wishing or calling on the government not to swear in Tinubu based on the fact that there were irregularities witnessed in the election. But what about the Nigerian people? What's the state of things going on in their minds with regards to post-May 29? There's hope, of course, that Nigeria will improve regardless of which man sits there and calls the shot. But such must have been the expectation of Nigerians even before, the first votes were cast on the election day with regards to who the expectation was on to emerge winner at the end of the day. And I like to believe that such was the hope for Nigerians as well. Back in 2015 and 2019, when President Buhari came on board after defeating former President Goodluck Jonathan. But the last 8 years of the Buhari administration, spearheaded by the APC, has somewhat left a bitter taste on the lips of many who say there's been a large political non-advancement in the country, and have also fingered Mr. President for, dragging or having cold feet in implementing policies that were promised or initiated by his government. So we have another APC government likely to come in should Mr. Tinubu be sworn in on May 29. So what are the positives to draw from the so-called renewed hope mantra of the president-elect? Well, the controversy surrounding his victory underscores the task ahead of him, and once he is inaugurated, he knows he will have to lead the administration in several key areas. Well, there are some focus areas we perhaps touch on, and that includes restoring the winning faith that the public has in government by building some kind of legitimacy, around his government. And secondly, demonstrating that the new administration has the capacity to govern effectively. Such must have been the expectations of the Buhari government when he came on board. There was a promise to tackle insecurity heads-on in a space of 3 to 6 months, and also defeating the dreaded Boko Haram sect. But the jury is still out on just how well the government had fared in that regard, considering Boko Haram still have pockets of locations where they're carrying out their deadly act against Nigerian people and government facilities and installations. So they have to show capacity to govern differently from what Nigerians have seen under the Buhari administration. Also, there's a small matter of the government being concerned with protecting people from all forms of vulnerabilities, including political, begging your pardon, as well as social and economic problems. If the people are vulnerable to issues, then it means the government has somewhat failed, because we're in a democracy, beg your pardon, and everyone does agree that under a democracy, people have the right to vent their displeasure, discontent, and perhaps mild anger towards programs and policies of government that they feel have not benefited the people. So what kind of response will we get from a Tinubu administration in such regard? The Buhari administration claims it had respected the freedom of the press. This comment, of course, came from the press or journalists in the country, and that of the people in general were well respected. Well, how true was that? Your mind quickly, rushes through to the NSAS protest and the gory incident that took place at the Lekki toll gate, where unarmed Nigerians were allegedly shot at by the Nigerian army. Well, we haven't seen the last of this issue yet, and that's because it apparently seems to have been swept under the carpet, but there are many who are appealing for the investigations into that matter to be concluded, and those who were behind the Startley Act should be brought to book. So what kind of response are we envisaging from a Tinubu administration when incidents like this do come up? Also, another task ahead of him is obviously mitigating the material drivers of corruption and criminality by, first of all, ensuring that there's a reduction in poverty, unemployment, underemployment, as well as inequality. But already, when you talk about corruption, that's another thing we expected, or most had expected, that the Buhari administration would tackle heads-on. He seems to pride himself on being a man who doesn't tolerate corruption. Back from his heydays as military head of state, remember the initiation of the War Against Indiscipline initiative, which was spearheaded by his then deputy, the late Tunde Idiagbon. Well, under the civilian administration, you would not expect to see the men in barracks on the streets trying to implement this policy. Instead, it's rather making overtures to the Nigerian people, as I said earlier on, ensuring that all forms of vulnerability are actually treated and the people protected from such. But dwelling with the matter of corruption, it didn't seem like the Buhari administration tackled it heads-on, as was the expectations of most Nigerians, except for the fact that many claimed that the war against corruption appeared to be one-sided. What different posture are we expecting from President-elect Bola Tinubu going forward. And being a two-term governor and a former senator of the Federal Republic, and also considered by some of his supporters as an astute and pragmatic strategist who has the sagacity to excel in party politics, he has promised Nigeria a deal of a progressive leadership through his mantra of renewed hope, which is what we're going to look at. How many Nigerians doubt that Tinubu can rescue a system in which he has become a prime actor as well as a benefactor? He was pretty key to President Buhari becoming president, so much so that he openly made this remark himself when he first announced he wanted to run for president, and said it was a lifelong ambition. Of course, it appeared that some level of opposition was coming in from some quarters, purportedly, and then he brushed off all of those claims by saying he made President Buhari president. And we cannot fault that, considering the famous or infamous merger, depending on how you see it, that produced the APC as we have it today. We know it was a merger of Tinubu's ACN, Buhari's CPC, ABGA, as well as the new PDP, the faction of the People's Democratic Party that was led by then former Senate President Bukola Saraki. They came together to form what we had as the APC, but everyone agreed that Tinubu was more or less the big face in there, and the magnanimity he showed in allowing President Buhari to clinch the ticket of the party to contest against Jonathan in that election, some would describe as spectacular. And doesn't it appear that he's now become a major benefactor in that, because he has clearly had a say in some of the scheme of things under the Buhari administration? And some would also argue the manner at which he emerged the candidate of the All Progressives Congress after the primaries in May last year speaks volume of the influence that Tinubu has, not just on the party, but as far as governance in Nigeria is concerned. Well, today is, a few days away from taking over the mantra and the mantle of leadership himself. Crisis of fuel scarcity joining, and one that the current administration has really struggled to deal with. So what's the expectation on that Tinubu represents the popular change that the country actually needs, or that his tenure will offer what you might term a progressive departure from the status quo that we're experiencing in the country at the moment, or which many Nigerians are actually angling for. This is because it's very much part of the country's political establishment for many, many years. For a man who says this has been a lifelong ambition to become president, a battle many say must have begun 30 years ago, shortly after the annulment of the June 12, 1993 election by the military administration of Ibrahim Babangida. The likes of Tinubu, who was alleged to have been one of the sponsors of the late MKO Abiola, actually spearheaded the campaign against the military administration of late General Sani Abacha, who had swept off the interim administration of Ernest Shonekan because he felt the Southwest region had been cheated following the annulment of MKO Abiola's emergence as president-elect of the June 12, 1993 elections. And from then on, it seems to have been strategically preparing a roadmap towards returning to Aso Rock himself as president. And that has culminated in him becoming a senator of the Federal Republic, a governor 2 times in Lagos, and today he stands president-elect. The task before his government, of course, is to fulfill people's expectations by responding to their legitimate yearnings as well as their aspirations. And this goes beyond electioneering. Now, the administration clearly has to get its priorities right. And oftentimes in Nigeria, we tend to see governments come to power without, any clear understanding of what it takes to govern. So it appears some people are only just poised to bear the title of president, governor, senator, honorable, or whatever title is attached to whatever political office one is holding. But maybe if we have a policy shift in this regard, we'll begin to see the dividends of democracy trickle down even to the grassroots. So what specific concerns of government are there to pursue for the incoming administration? Well, the government will have to strive to restore the waning public faith in government through an altruistic leadership And this means the welfare of the people must, well, the jury is still out. Opinion will be divided on how well each of these governments have executed their policies. But we have to deal with the currents because we're talking about a transition year. And what are some issues taken by this administration that appear to follow with the scarcity of the Naira, even after welcoming the positives that were attached to redesigning the 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira note, and the effect of it were disturbingly, porous for most Nigerians. Concurrent use of the old and new Naira notes, the government disobeyed the court's rulings, and it took them the third time of asking before President Buhari eventually decided to comply with the Supreme Court's ruling. So does that show that the welfare of the people had come first? Well, that's one area the incoming administration will have to look at. What about the loans? Nigeria's loan deficits currently runs into trillions, and the bulk of them are being borrowed from China. And some have blamed what they call the rubber stamp legislature led by Senate President Ahmed Lawan for simply signing off every single request made by the Buhari administration to borrow, and so able to pay off such humongous loans. Or would it not rather go borrowing again to fix most of its problems? It all sums up to putting the people's welfare first as a priority. Also, the administration building a legitimacy and capacity to govern effectively is something most Nigerians would want to see. Beyond having the requisite mechanisms, institutions, as well as policies, people's goodwill and confidence must that the APC has had in the course of this election. Even after the elections, the likes of Femi Fani-Kayode and Festus Keyamo, the Minister of State for Labour and Employment, have both been criticized for the kind of comments that they make in defending their principles in the APC. If they are not guarded by the kind of rhetoric they push around, it will clearly brew up divisiveness amongst the Nigerian populace and may form or constitute a kind of distrust should also be the focus, and several other things. But the question is, how hopeful are Nigerians that the president-elect will push through on all of these issues? We'll revisit some of these and more again when we come back from this break. Political Spectrum will continue. Just stay with us.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. the health of this relay. Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories, and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
One truth.
Welcome back, and many thanks for staying on. You're still watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum TV. Don't forget, you can always connect with us on Star Times DTH Channel 421, and feel free to head to all of our social media platforms to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, so you may catch up with all the live feeds that you may have missed out on. We'd love, of course, to hear from you, and the conversation on these issues does continue on all of our Facebook, on all of our social media platforms, especially on Facebook. We encourage you to leave us a comment. We'd love to read from you. And a quick reminder of the major issues up for discussion this morning. Post May 29, we've been asking, should Nigerians be positive about the incoming administration of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, while also the House of Reps has demanded that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, deletes the names of dead voters from its voter register. We'll talk about that shortly, but let's wrap up on the issue around the expectations of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu presidency in the event that it does get sworn in come May 29. We'll be looking at several issues that he needs to address when he does come on board, especially at a time where it appears Nigerians are quite divided, a lot of which as a fallout of the just concluded elections, which most Nigerians were largely dissatisfied on. While the material drivers of corruption and criminality, of course, will have to be mitigated by reducing poverty, unemployment, underemployment, and inequality. A humongous tax indeed for the country, considering the current position Nigeria finds itself, following several indexes that places us at the wrong end of the table, showing the list of poor countries in the world, a list of countries with the highest rates of unemployment in the world as well. It's not a good position for Nigeria, most would agree. So the tax before Tinubu is pretty clear. It has to deal with all of these issues. And taken into consideration is May Day celebration to Nigerian workers commemorating the International Workers' Day, where he promised a living wage for all workers in Nigeria. Would that go a long way to reducing poverty, unemployment, as well as inequality in society? Well, it clearly means that the government has to be deliberate and, pretty much certain about what it hopes to do with a lot of social investment programs, which is something the APC really promised. And some said it was nice, a pretty nice idea, that the first manifestos, the first show to Nigeria when they came on board back in 2014, in the lead up to the 2015 election, had a lot of programs targeted at social investment. The Empower program, the Special Public Works program, the School Feeding program, several others. How successful have these programs been? Not forgetting the CBN Anchors Borrower Scheme, which we keep hearing people have been benefiting from. But how is it possible that the nation's economy is still not properly diversified, especially in the area of agriculture, if close to over R1 billion has been spent on the Anchors Borrower Scheme? Why aren't we seeing the dividends of this? That's something Tinubu would have to tackle heads on when he does come on board. So what next going forward? Well, the 2023 elections and the transition, of course, clearly offers Nigerians an opportunity to reposition itself for good governance, for sustainable security, as well as development. And the expectation is that the incoming president will mark a shift from the legacies, if there is any legacy, by the way, of the President Buhari administration by bringing his personal leadership style to bear on the process of governance. And the crux of this endeavor clearly has to be being able to secure and also develop the society in pursuit of the welfare of the people, as he has promised over time in his renewed hope agenda. But perhaps we've seen a clue or had a clue of what President-elect Bola Tinubu will likely do when he gets into office. Yesterday, was, by the way, the second and the last day of his 2-day working visit to Rivers State, where he commissioned several projects. And of course, the icing on the cake was his response to Governor Wike's appeal that his government should endeavor to refund the monies used by the Rivers State government to commission some road projects in the states that should have been, the exclusive of the federal government. Well, yes, what Tinubu responded to. He said, these are your roads, fix it, it's for the benefit of your people. However, you did a good thing, but if I have to refund this money to you, you're going to have to lobby for it. So are we expecting an administration where people will have to intensify, lobbying to get, some project for the benefit of their people? Well, we've already gotten muted responses in this regard, with some saying, we hope it doesn't have to extend to allocations and maybe the 13% derivation that is accrued to Niger Delta or all producing states in the country. That was certainly let off a cannon on issues that we're not prepared for. So perhaps the incoming administration would have to be very careful in that regard, because Nigerians are clearly watching. Well, speaking about Nigerians, they constituted a greater part of the electioneering process as documented in the voter register of the 2023 elections. Just before the elections, weeks before, INEC announced that its voter register had seen as many as 93 million plus getting set to take part in the 2023 elections. Shortly after the collection of the PVCs, INEC said over 86 million Nigerians had succeeded in getting their voter cards in readiness for the February 25 and March 18 exercises. Disappointingly, the number that was reflective on election day was a far cry from the number of those who had gotten their PVCs, let alone the entirety of the names on the voter register. Well, talk about irregularities characterizing the elections. Another fresh revelation has been made. The House of Representatives has mandated INEC to begin cleaning what they called a bogus voter register. Well, this is coming on the heels of claims by a member of the House of Representatives in the person of Honorable Leke Abejide, who said that the voter register contained names of dead persons, including his late father. And he alleged that the Commission's voter register is filled with millions. He used the word millions of dead and non-existent persons. So maybe the main agenda or the talk here is around the use of the word dead voters on the list. But non-existent simply means there could be a lot of fake registrations that have actually been done. So call that a padding of the voter register. Doesn't that amount or constitute to an electoral fraud? And how will they sum up the post-election litigations we're expecting in court? Let's get a listen from the plenary session of the House of Representatives yesterday, which was spearheaded by the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, and find out the submission made by the lawmakers in mandating INEC to begin cleansing its indeed bogus register.
Mr. Speaker, my distinguished colleagues, Honorable Peter Oyozide Akwatasi, Deputy Leader of the House. Mr. Speaker, I second the motion as ably moved by...
For the motion, say aye. Against, say nay. The House is hereby resolving to Committee of the Whole to consider reports and bills. Respected colleagues, the first bill to consider for an act to establish National Sports Commission to be charged with responsibility of administering, encouraging, and developing sports and games throughout Nigeria and for related matters. And I invite the leader of the House to give the synopsis of the report.
17.
16.
Okay. Okay, sir. Mr. Speaker, Honorable members, this is a bill for an act to establish the National Sports Commission to be charged with the responsibility of administering and encouraging and developing sports and games throughout Nigeria and for related matters. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a straightforward bill. It has to do with the encouragement and development of our sporting activities as a nation. And I think this bill will go a long way in really entrenching a very good legislation that will promote and will provide platform for an effective sporting activities in the country. It has to do also with the creating a platform for our youth to indulge in sports and sporting activities. Mr. Speaker, in this era where the youth are looked upon to provide leadership not only in sporting activities, I think this is a very good bill that every member should contribute to see it through. Mr. Speaker, I therefore submit that we give this bill a speedy passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues? Clause 1. Clause 2. 16. Clause 17. Clause 18. 19. Schedules. Explanatory memoranda, if any. None. Long 30. Respected colleagues, the second bill to be considered for an act to establish Federal University of Science and Technology, Remo, Ogun State, and following matters. I now invite the leader to give the synopsis of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, this is another bill, of course, an establishment bill, a bill to establish a Federal University of Science and Technology, Remo, in Ogun State. Mr. Speaker, this is also a developmental bill that will now enhance and entrench an establishment of a university, especially in the area of technology, science and technology. Mr. Speaker, I believe honorable members can agree with me that science and technology is one sector of Nigerian education that we must have to promote. And establishing this university in an area like Remo in Ogun State will definitely help us achieve this educational development. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, sorry, Honorable Osai, Nicholas Osai, particularly, I want to urge you to...
Welcome back. Those were deliberations on the floor of plenary yesterday by the House of Representatives mandating INEC to actually cleanse its bogus voter register. I'll just go through some of the submissions that he made. He said, even my own deceased father, who passed on long ago, still has his name displayed on the board. Apart from the dead voters, there are millions of fictitious voters who do not exist anywhere on this planet Earth but have their names on INEC register of voters. It is believed that this came to being as a result of double or multiple registrations by Nigerians who have had or have the intention of rigging elections, but with the advent of the beavers, these faceless individuals can no more vote. On that note, the Commission was of course admonished to conduct a public enlightenment about some of what makes the register bogus. But there are more questions to all of this. First of which is why now? I mean, the elections were on February 25 and March 18. The voter register was concluded shortly after the end of the CVR exercise, that's the continuous voter registration process, before INEC released the voter register. Surely, if the likes of Honorable Leke had experienced this anomaly before the elections took place and witnessed that his late father's name was still on the voter register, why did he not raise an alarm just before the elections? Why now? That's pretty much some of the questions Nigerians will be asking. And I did say, considering that the voter register contained, as the House of Reps have claimed, millions of non-existent names, whom he said most do not even exist on planet Earth, then can we rightly say that the true number of votes that we had in the outcome of these elections were a true reflection of the exact number of persons who had registered to take part in that exercise, or they were not all clearly doctored? These are massive issues that have put paid to Nigeria's electoral process and would call for serious scrutiny, by all. I'm very sure a lot of the opposing political parties would likely add this to their suits, which of course are at the respective election petitions tribunal across the country, from the presidential to the National Assembly, state governorship, and state assembly posts that we experienced in the past 2 months. So interesting times ahead indeed, but as usual, we do want to continue following up on all of these issues and bring you up to speed with them as well. But we have to sincerely apologize. We've been having difficulties getting in touch. Godwin, who was expected to talk us through these issues, especially with the concerns around the INEC voter register, because he was clearly a part of the process in training and retraining some of the ad hoc staff that were used for that exercise. And, you know, not just the PVCs or the use of the Beaver system for the elections, but also the registration process itself. But hopefully next time we have a chance to bring him up, we'll be glad to do so, to ascertain his thoughts on this matter. But whether INEC would follow up on this is another matter altogether, as much as they've been told to conduct a public enlightenment to, of course, explain what makes a voter register bogus. Most Nigerians already have used edition of the program. Thanks indeed for joining us. But we'll be back again on Monday, meeting at the National Working Committee level in Abuja, where we've been told that they cannot take a position yet until the President-elect Bola Tinubu also makes his input. Or when that meeting took place, Tinubu was in Rivers State commissioning project place for 4 hours, and at the end, no decision was reached on zoning yet, except that the party has said it's a matter that would also need inputs from the President-elect until they decide where to zone the principal positions in the National Assembly too, as far as the Senate, Deputy Senate Presidents, the Speaker, and the Deputy Speaker positions are concerned. Some caucuses have already come out to say they would want the process to be thrown open regardless of the Assembly. It's left to be seen how far this will go, but lobbying, of course, does continue, and one of which has to be one of the big names on the list in the running for the coveted position, and that's the former governor of Akwa Ibom State, Senator Godswill Akpabio, who is a man with requisite experience in the National Assembly, having served for 8 years in the House of Representatives and 1 term in the Senate so far. Well, it appears the Akpabio and Jibril camp have come together to reach a consensus amongst each other. Through Jibril Barral, based on their arrangement, would become the Deputy Senate President. Interesting times ahead indeed. But next week, we'll have fresher stories and developments to tell you about. So do well to keep a date with us if you can. But thank you so much for joining us on Political Spectrum for today. From me, Raymond Ita, and the rest